So you may or may not know this. I just came back from my annual 10-day silent meditation retreat. You know, to me it's at the same time personal and professional development. I feel so much more grounded when I come back from that. Really ready to, I try to go in January and really ready to move into the year from a different place. And it was, once again, I've been going there for 6 years now. And it was once again an amazing experience. Every time I get to deepen, I get to go a little deeper, I get to perhaps, I don't know, remove a few layers of the infinite layers of veils around the ego and get a little bit of a glimpse as to what lies underneath. And I think the timing of my coming back earlier this week was just perfect because it parallels the experience of the Israelites in this week's Torah portion. It's really interesting how sometimes things converge like that. Yesterday, just yesterday, we were at the foot of Mount Sinai. And just yesterday we witnessed revelation. It was just yesterday that the mountain exploded. Columns of fire, smoke. Everything trembled. Our bodies were shaking. Everything was topsy-turvy. We didn't know what was right, what was left. And the Torah says that we heard the lightning and we saw the thunder. And just to give us a sense of how beyond senses this experience may be. And then the divine appeared amidst the clouds and the loud blowing of the shofarot, the trumpets, the shofars that were surrounding the whole mountain. And God, the divine, however we understand that, pronounced the 10 utterances, the 10 statements. Some call them wrongly the 10 Commandments. And then the day was over. And then we went back to camp, to the tents. Then we came home from the 10-day meditation retreat. And then there was the next day. And now what? I mean, can you imagine waking up that next day, that next morning, after having lived through that experience? Can you imagine perhaps the spiritual hangover, I don't know what you would call it, from the unfathomable to breakfast? From 10 days of deep silence, no eye contact, meditation, retreat, when you get to sit for 13, 14 hours with yourself, to the Iowa caucuses And those are close analogies, don't you think? What do we do? What do we do the next day, you know? Because life happens. No matter how peaky your spiritual experience was, and you know, the images of the mountain, so it's a peak. It's not a mistake that we call those peak experiences. You know, most of peak experiences happens around mountains. But life happens the next day. There is breakfast to make. There are necessities to attend to. There is community, there is family, there is everything. It reminds me of my favorite book title, and I know I've shared this several times in this space, but when I revisit that Torah portion, Mishpatim, it always comes back. A book by Jack Kornfield called After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. Perfect. After the ecstasy, the laundry. Because what do you do after you've experienced a moment like this? And it doesn't have to be Sinai, you know. It happens in our lives in different ways. It doesn't have to be 10-day silent meditation retreat. It could be you, me, sitting in front of a sunrise or a sunset of a newborn baby, of newborn doggies. It could be a piece of music that tears us apart, that just opens us up, right? It could be any moment like that. Most of us have had the blessing to encounter in our life. And you have this heart opening, you have this aha, this new understanding. But now what? Now what? And I think that's exactly the question that Moses was asking himself that next morning as we open the Torah and read the words of the Torah portion. He was scratching his head, or his beard, or his face, I don't know what he was doing. Scratching some part. And he was thinking, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to move forward after this? What can I give these people that is tangible, that is actionable, that they can wrap their mind around? And this Torah portion called Mishpatim is exactly what Moses did. He began to speak of rules and practices, spiritual ways of taking what we had met, taking the ineffable and translating that into daily, ongoing spiritual practices so he can stay with us, infuse who we are, and be embodied in the mundane life that follows. So there are pages of all different gorgeous, compassionate, loving practices that are written in the pages of the Torah. Because what Moses did in doing this, his message to us, to all of us back then and to this day, was that the most important of the whole thing is the laundry. Because whether or not you're going to have those moments of opening and experiences, peak experience. What truly matters is how you do the laundry, is how you are being in the everyday, mundane happening of life. And the image of the laundry is very powerful. It touches us at really two different levels. The first level is that in fact, if you have experienced this opening, if you have had this heart that bursts open, this flow of love that you connected to, this understanding of reality beyond the constraints and the walls of the ego, if you have been blessed with that kind of understanding, big or small, that it behooves you to translate that into who you're going to be being the next morning. It behooves you to let that infuse your way of life and your actions. If you dissociate that experience from your everyday life, then you've missed the point altogether. Any true spiritual path is a path that is going to look at the laundry and know how sacred an act that is. How holy an act that is. Because once we know the sacredness of it all, there is no outside of sacredness anymore. There is no, this side is not sacred, that side is. You can't draw this line anymore. So in fact, the laundry is a sacred moment, a sacred act of love-giving, of self-surrender, of deep service that is egoless, and therefore no longer is a burden or a chore. That's one aspect of this analogy of the laundry. The other one is that the laundry itself, at the same time, becomes our practice. Right? Because the problem is, and our sages knew it all the way to biblical times, it doesn't matter how big the experience was. After a week, a month, if you're lucky, a year, that experience is going to begin to recede in the fog of everyday stuff. Because the world is so good in pulling our ego into the doing, into satisfying our next desires, into getting the next gratification, into making the case that we are right and therefore they are wrong. Because we get so much power out of it that we really need the practice. We really need time and time again to lead mindful lives, to remind ourselves every moment with every action almost that this moment is sacred, that this person we are talking to is holy, that this planet is God manifesting. So the laundry is the practice. You know, we say, 6 days you shall work at your occupation, and on the 7th day you should Shabbat. And we have this notion that Shabbat, one day a week, is our spiritual day. We're going to attend to matters of spirit that day. The 6 other days, you work at your occupation. You're involved with the mundane stuff. You let ego run the show. But on Shabbat, you take a break from ego, supposedly. I don't hear it this way. Surprise. I know you're very surprised. 6 days you shall work at your occupation. 6 days you shall do the spiritual work while you are busy with your occupations. Do you hear that? 6 days you must work moment to moment to be mindful, to remember, to do the practices. Because it's during those 6 days that is the hardest to remember. Spirituality happens during the 6 days. Shabbat is the day you can stop. Shabbat is the day that is a taste of messianic time. It's the taste of that kind of awareness and consciousness that permeates all of it. So you don't need to work, you don't need to practice. The day itself is the resting in that awareness, the resting in that consciousness. Spiritual practice happens the rest of the week. Now, how do we make that happen? Because it's wonderful to have all the laws that Moses has given us through the dictate of God, however we understand that to be. But we also could write our own practices, and maybe we all have written our own practices. And they probably sit in that binder, wherever you had them, since you wrote them. I mean, we know, but it's hard to do. There is knowing, and they are acting upon that knowledge. What we need is what our sages called fierce kavanah, fierce intentionality. The battle happens moment to moment. The sages of the Musar in our tradition call that there is a battle going on moment to moment between the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara within ourselves. The Yetzer HaTov is the good inclination, the inclination towards goodness. The Yetzer Hara is the evil inclination, the inclination towards ego stuff, what moves us away from our divine center versus what moves us closer towards our divine center. And that battle between the two happens moment to moment. You can't ever let your guard down. But the good news is that there is the Yetzer HaTov. That we are not condemned to fall prey to the egotistic, narcissistic Yetzer Hara. There is within us the Yetzer HaTov. And in this week's Torah portion, and I wrote it down because it's one of my favorite verses. Well, one of my favorite voices too, but one of my favorite verses in Torah. After Moses has told us all the rules and all the practices, God says, great. Now let me tell you something else. And God tells us, here, Hine, here, I am placing an angel within you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place I have made ready. Let me read it again. It's just gorgeous. God says, here, here, not there, here, right here. I am placing an angel within you to guard you on your way, to guard you from the Yetzer Hara, to guard you from the world pulling at you, moving you out of sync. And and to bring you to the place that I have made ready. It's ready. We don't have to make it. It's already ready. It's there. It's prepared. It's waiting. It's ready for us to meet again. And our job is to have fierce determination, fierce kavanah, fierce intentionality, to let the angel guide us back to that place within. And you know, the word for place in Hebrew, hamakom, is one of the names of God. So our job is to engage in our own battle. To give the angel that is there to guide us back home a chance to do so. I invite you. I invite you to find that angel within. To find that force within ourselves, and it's within all of us. That impulse to evolve, that impulse to grow, that impulse to know truth has always been there. It's probably why you're here tonight. Why you are engaged in a spiritual journey, because you are. Because something within you is moving you back home, where you've never left.